Pint and the Pendulum, an original comedy sketch in 4 acts and several questionable decisions. And just in case, any similarity to Scottish independence supporters, alive or dead, is purely inevitable. Characters: Dale, a staunch independence supporter, owns several End London Rule t-shirts, once tried to crowdfund a Scottish national anthem on TikTok. Passionate, excitable, always ready for a debate, Geordie, unionist, sentimental, stubborn like an old kettle, watches Antiques Roadshow and Last of the Summer Wine like their government decreed, fiercely loyal to his British identity, soft spot for his local pub. Jean, the neutral force, never takes sides, always gets the last word, lives for pub gossip, Tia Maria, and cheesy Watsits, sharp-witted, practical, and loves stirring the pot just for the fun of it. Malcolm, the pub landlord, doesn't take part in debates, always manages to get his tuppence worth in while collecting glasses. Deadpan wisdom, the kind you only get from decades behind the bar. Act 1, the Great Debate, or Pickled Eggs. The week before the 2014 Scottish Independence Referendum, Coaster's pub perched above Pasquale's Italian restaurant in Greenock. The air was a confusing mixture of garlic bread, sea spray, or at least everyone hoped it was sea spray, and the despairing hint of a clogged gents' toilet. The carpet had seen better decades and the jukebox blared 500 miles by the Proclaimers, like it was trying to drown out the sound of a seagull outside, rethinking its life choices. At a corner table sat Dale, Geordie and Jean, while Malcolm, the landlord, prowled nearby collecting glasses, a silent referee in the eternal skirmish between opinions. Jean glanced up at the ceiling, which sagged like a defeated flan. "That ceiling's still threatening to baptize us," she observed. Malcolm, ducking past with an armful of empties, scowled. "That ceiling's costing me a fortune." Dale, who was never happier than when finding metaphors for Scotland's plight, pounced. "That ceiling is the Union, on the brink, cracks showing, dripping with all kinds of historic injustices." "It's a leak, Dale," Geordie snorted. "Not a bloody constitutional collapse." "Aye, well," Dale shrugged. "Tell that to the folk in Westminster with the buckets." Jean popped a cheesy Watsit into her mouth, unimpressed. "You two've been having this same argument since Nicola was on Loose Women." Geordie grunted. "If Scotland leaves, I'll eat that ceiling tile. With curry sauce." "Make sure the curry sauce is locally sourced," Malcolm muttered. "Not too local, mind." Jean leaned back, arms crossed like a judge at a particularly rowdy school debate. "Right. Independence? A national destiny? Or a new way to ruin your tea?" Dale leaned in, eyes gleaming. "We've got the people, the resources, the creativity. You can't run a country on poetry and wind turbines." Geordie cut in. Jean smirked. "No, but it beats running it on Empire biscuits and Spitfires." The three of them clinked glasses, not agreeing, but united in stubborn affection for the pub, the town, and each other. Above them, the ceiling creaked ominously, while outside, the existential seagull gave another long, regretful cry. Act 2, Economics and Egypts. The table now resembled a battlefield. More empty glasses, a beer mat soaked to surrender, and a map of Europe stained with pizza grease from a late-night Pasquale's raid. Dale jabbed at Denmark on the map with a chip. "Look at them. Happy. Rich. They're all riding around on bicycles. And they didn't have to ask Westminster for a cycling proficiency test." Malcolm, passing by balancing pint glasses like sacred relics, rumbled, "And they didn't spend 300 years negotiating who gets the crown jewels and who gets the Trident submarines either." Jean laughed, spraying crumbs. And they didn't have a neighbour shouting, "You'll never do it," every time they tried to take the stabilisers off. Dale beamed. Exactly. We act like independence is a pub quiz and London's the guy who's not even playing but still shouting out all the answers. Gordy shook his head. You want us to go solo with what? Monopoly money? We create our own currency, Dale insisted. Or pick one that suits us. That's the whole point. We decide. Jean sipped her Tia Maria thoughtfully. Call it the thistle. A fiver that pricks you on the thumb if you try to spend it in Cowan's bookies. Better off printing vouchers for Irn-Bru and tatty scones, Gordy muttered. Ireland managed it. Norway, Lithuania, Dale cried. Malcolm polished the counter with a look of pure existential exhaustion. Aye, and none of them had to sit through Andrew Neil explaining currency union like he was hosting the weakest link. Jean pointed at Dale's hair, grinning. You're the weakest ginger hair dye. Goodbye. Dale refused to be derailed. We're capable. It's not about being perfect. It's about being accountable. It's about being skint if it all goes sideways, Gordy muttered. Jean shrugged. Like we're all rolling in it just now. Outside, the seagull let out a slow, mournful honk, as if offering its own worries about the future. Act 3, flags, different strokes for different folks, and the fight for the telly remote. Later, the pub had quietened to a low hum. The jukebox spun cap in hand, the unofficial anthem of weary idealists. Jean, now propped against the bar, surveyed her pals through Tia Maria-tinted glasses. So what's this really about then? Flags? It's about standing on your own feet, Dale said, the wobble in his voice not entirely from the pints. Even if your shoes are full of rainwater. It's about remembering who you are, Gordy said gruffly, British and proud. Jean arched a brow. I'm Scottish, Greenock born, European by default, only British by postcode. Dale pressed on, voice thick with hope. We've got a chance to shape something different, something better. Or worse, Gordy muttered, but there wasn't much bite left in him. Jean shrugged. Nothing changes if nobody tries. If we make a mess of it, so what? It'll be our mess. Dale grinned, raising his pint. Exactly. Gordy sighed and rubbed his temples. You two make it sound so romantic. But it's graft, it's risk. Jean shot him a sideways smile. So is staying exactly where we are. You ever tried arguing with the guy in the brew at 9 o'clock in the morning? Outside, the drunken warbling of someone leaving Pasquale's drifted past the window. A rogue pizza box, caught in the breeze, tumbled down the street like a scruffy flag of freedom. Act 4. The Union's final act. A week later, the same table. Only this time, mugs of tea had replaced the pints, and the vibe was quieter, heavier. A newspaper lay sprawled open. Scotland votes no. Jean tapped the headline with a fingernail. Well, that's that. 55% said no. Dale slumped back in his chair. Feels like somebody's nicked my socks and replaced them with Union Jack ones from Poundland. Cheer up, Gordy said half-heartedly. We've still got the EU, the customs union, freedom of movement. Jean snorted. David Cameron says he's looking forward to 2 more terms as Prime Minister. No way, Dale groaned. Surely the Tories have somebody better than him? And Donald Trump's still just a telly host, Gordy added, firing folk on The Apprentice. Behind the bar, Malcolm muttered darkly while drying a pint glass. Aye, for now. But if he ever runs for anything bigger than a golf course, I'm moving to Greenland. Gordy shook his head. Well, at least the debate's done with. Outside, the same battered seagull landed on an overflowing bin and let out a screech that seemed to foretell doom. Inside, the jukebox flipped back to Sunshine on Leith. Jean lifted her tea to the Union, still hanging in there like that ceiling tile and still as clogged as the gents. To Hope, Dale said softly, whatever shape it takes next. And to Malky, Gordy added, raising his mug. Still the only guy in Greenock that never lets you down. Hey, Malky, he called across the bar. The usual, please. And as the lights dimmed in coasters and the waves battered the Clyde outside, life went on in Greenock. Battered, bickering and, like every other town in Scotland, still stuck between a rock and a hard place. The end of the beginning.